Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jata Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Ischa Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, wow. I closed my eyes, I opened back up, and there's more people here. Welcome, everybody. So, some of you have been here on previous days, maybe some of you are here for the first day, but we've been discussing, you could say, the yoga philosophy, right? Just understanding how yoga works, in a sense. And we've defined yoga. We've said that yoga is a practice which empowers one to overcome the obstacle of the mind, for the purpose of the self experiencing its own true nature. Right? Everybody got that? Want to repeat it after me? Ready? Yoga is a practice which empowers one to overcome the obstacle of the mind for the purpose of the self experiencing their own true nature. And this is something that all of us could experience. Each one of us has the potential to do. Hi, welcome. Haven't seen you since the summer. I know I recognized you, now it clicked. that we all have this potential to experience our own true nature. It's kind of our birthright. It's kind of a shame that we're not. This nature by the yogis, by the sages, is said to be Sat Chit Ananda, eternal, conscious, full of knowledge, full of bliss. But we've lost touch with it. In a sense, lost touch. In some ways, to say even the word lost touch with it is a little misleading, because it's always there. It's never going anywhere. It's not like we left it behind and we have to go and search to find it. But in a sense, we have to search within. Right? It's there, but we have to go and find it. We have to uncover it. But it's something that we have with us all along. And so we spoke at length on the nature of the self, that which we're trying to experience through yoga. And later, we'll talk about the practices, 4 different paths of yoga. And then after that, we're going to get into very interesting topics, which Krishna calls the greatest secret of the Vedic literature, that confidential Vedanta that has to do with devotion or prema, or divine love. We'll get there too. But for now, we want to discuss the mind. Yes, question.
Would you mind if I record you?
Not at all. Yes, sure.
Can I bring my phone closer to you?
Yeah, that's fine. You can put it right here if you like, as you like.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So we're talking about the mind, and we describe the mind as being like a computer. It processes information, it stores information. And we discussed that the senses are like the plug-in devices into a computer. The eyes are like, what? Like a camera. The ears are like a microphone, right? The voice is like the speakers. The hard drive, the memory, or we could call it the subconscious mind, a storehouse of memory, a storehouse of experiences. And the Sanskrit word for the impressions left in the subconscious mind, samskaras, right? Okay. So we discussed all that. And we also discussed that there are 3 applications that are functioning on the mind, on the random access memory of the mind. And those are the impulsive mind, in Sanskrit called the manas, which we discussed at length yesterday. And there's also the ahankara, the ego, the conception of oneself. And then third, there's something called the buddhi, or the intellect, the reasoning faculty. It's like a filter of reasoning that functions as an application within the mind. And these 3 applications are interfacing with each other. They're interfacing with the subconscious mind. They're interfacing with the senses. And in this way, they're connecting with all the data that's coming in from outside. All right, it's simple enough. But let's just step back for 1 second and let's look at our predicament. Right? We could call it the predicament of the soul, the predicament of the self. That each of us is, not this body, not this mind, we're a spark. A tiny little spark, but like so powerful and indestructible and blissful by nature. And yet we're trapped within a body that's not made out of spirit, that's made out of matter. Very different thing, right? Our nature as Purusha, our nature as spirit, spiritual energy, is that we're eternal, we're blissful, we have a deep understanding of truth. But it becomes covered in this body, which has a completely different nature. It's temporary. It's full of ignorance, right? It's often can be miserable, right? The body can be miserable. Actually, the body has a lot more potential for misery than it does for pleasure, if you think about it. How much pleasure can we derive, from the skin? But think about how much pain we can derive, So this body is not ideal for us. Right? And even the mind is also composed of matter. It's a very subtle matter. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhumir apa lano vayu kangmano buddhir evacha ahankara itiyang me bina prakritir ashtada. He says, Arjuna, these are my 8 separated material energies. Earth, water, fire, air, ether. Those are called the mahabhutas, the big elements, like the big physical elements that we can very tangible to experience, but then there's 3 subtle elements, and these are the 3 applications on the mind. The manas, the ahankara, and the buddhi, the impulsive mind, the ego, and the intellect, or the reasoning faculty within the mind. So we're trapped within this body, engaging with the world through this mind, feeling out of touch with our own true nature. And we have programming in the computer of that mind that's giving us misinformation. This is the real challenging part, and this is what the yogi has to correct, has to find. If we're going to be free, we have to find a way to overcome this. We have to find a way to address this programming within the mind. Welcome, Andrea. And then we do that through the practice of yoga. Okay. But what is that misinformation? What is that programming? Very simply, we spoke yesterday about the impulsive mind, how there's one function within the mind, one application within the mind, which functions impulsively. It doesn't reason, it just has an instant reaction. I like it, I don't like it. And that part of the mind, the impulsive mind, is also what chooses how to act, chooses what to accept and what to reject. You understand? So we have a choosing faculty within the mind that has a very fickle nature. And it's programmed to say, I like this and I don't like that. And the important point that we discussed yesterday is this conception of I like this and I don't like that can be very problematic for us. Or we can say, I like this or I don't like that. Another way of phrasing that would be to say, this will make me happy. This won't make me happy. We have a mind that through our experience in life through our being born into this world, being raised by certain parents, being exposed to certain people and certain events and certain circumstances. And then on top of that, you put in media, television and film and music and all of these things. It's programmed our minds to accept certain thoughts about this will make me happy and that won't make me happy. This shape will make me happy. This shape won't make me happy, right? This experience, it's as if we believe that happiness is intrinsic and exists within a bar of chocolate, right? If I get it, I'll be happy. Right? Or happiness exists within a sexual experience, or happiness exists within getting more money, or getting a new apartment, or getting a new position, or whatever it may be. We're acting based on this programming in the mind to think I'll find happiness by achieving this, something external to me. That programming has us running all over the place. The yogis are saying we're running all over the place looking for that happiness. You just have to look inside. So that's part of our predicament. That's part of the confusion that we have to deal with. But there's another part of it. And now we're going to discuss the second of the three applications on the mind. And that's called the ahankara, or the ego. Not only do we have confusing data, confusing misinformation in the mind about what will make us happy and what won't, but we even have a misunderstanding of who we are. Right? Even if we have just who we are, we tend to, this application within the mind, the ahankara, or the ego, its function is that it roots our sense of identity, of who I am, to the body, to the mind, and to our external, all related to our external circumstances. I'm a man, I'm a woman, right? I'm American, I'm Indian, I'm black, I'm white, like this. Really, our identity has nothing to do with these things. And it's only for a very tiny speck in this linear time that we actually identify that way. And as a matter of fact, imagine that we had the ability to zoom out and look at our life from a very distant perspective, right? The yogis would say that if we could do that, we would see this lifetime as a very tiny little blip, a very tiny little experience in a line that goes endlessly backwards and forwards. Right? This little speck of a life that we call. But it would be perhaps fascinating to be able to look at our life like this, and maybe a little sad. And I'll discuss why, but also maybe a little comical. How is it that at this moment I was 100% convinced I was this identity? And then the next blip, I was just as convinced that I was someone else. And in the next blip, I was 100% convinced I was someone else. And we take on these identities and we fully embrace them. So now we're very confused. Does that make sense? Please raise your hand if this hasn't clicked, right? The body, the circumstance. I'm an American, or am I? Or for just a moment, did I pass through a body that was born in America, and then I let it go, and then I had a body from somewhere else? But I clung to that identity as if it were real, as if it were eternal, as if it was who I really was. The yogis can have this zoomed out perspective. So this ahankara, it's a very subtle power that roots our sense of identity. It kind of limits it to the form that we're currently in, keeps it restricted to that form. But it's all informed. It's an application. It's interfacing. It's interfacing with the likes and dislikes that are programmed within the impulsive mind, right? Some of us may have a taste for classical music, maybe jazz, gourmet food. And based on those likes and dislikes that are programmed in the mind, almost randomly, we might identify ourselves. We might adopt the ego that I'm a sophisticated person. I'm a sophisticated guy. I'm not a guy, right? I'm a sophisticated gentleman, right? I like classical music and opera. I can appreciate fine gourmet dining, right? Not everyone has an appreciation for it. Some people walk into the gourmet restaurant and they just see, oh, there's just some little tiny things kind of in a decoration on the plate, and it's very expensive. You know, they don't understand the subtleties that chef, had mastered, blending certain spices and sautéing it in just the right way. And people that are less sophisticated than myself cannot appreciate these subtleties. but okay. But I'm a sophisticated person. I'm not even saying that as a criticism of someone, or someone else may say, no, it may think exactly like this person was describing. You walk into the restaurant, why are you paying so much money for just the tiny little thing on the plate, right? Just give me some fast food, right? I'm a down-to-earth guy, right? Just give me some rock and roll, and a hamburger, and I'm happy. I don't need all of that. The opera is like the most boring thing possible. One person thinks opera is like the pinnacle of human artistic achievement. It's entirely cathartic and our most glorious contribution. And another person thinks, my God, that is the most boring thing. These people just going on and on like this. So our likes and dislikes inform who we think we are. I'm a down-to-earth person. I don't need that. But it's also the ego is also interfacing with the subconscious mind and all the memories in there, all the things we've been told about ourselves, right, throughout our entire lifetime. It's all that ego is drawing from that information, right? All the experiences that we've had in life, and it's creating a blend, of who we are, how we think about ourselves, like that. So that's another part of our predicament, right? One, we have a mind that's programmed with false ideas. This external thing will make me happy, this won't. On top of that, we have a false idea of who I am actually, okay? Now, imagine if we could zoom out and look at our life from another perspective, from a distant perspective. How enlightening that would be, how revealing that would be, what that would teach us about ourselves, and how that would give us the clarity and the conviction to take control of our own mind and take control of our own life. I wasn't that identity. I wasn't that identity either. I wasn't that identity either. I'm beyond all of that. I'm not the changing body and the changing mind. I'm the changeless observer of that. You understand? That perspective could give us the clarity. As we're moving through life, it's challenging. We may read books that speak about this kind of knowledge or these kind of insights. But as we move through our day, we tend to become overwhelmed by the circumstances in our day, whether they're challenging circumstances or tedious circumstances or stimulating circumstances. We take that identity right back into the body, right? We take it right back into the mind. And we become lost on that level of thought. Hard to break free. That's why the yoga, in yoga, there's so many practices that are helping us reform that mind, right? Today we'll have a ceremony here. We're celebrating Shivaratri. There'll be a ceremony where a form of Lord Shiva will be bathed while music is being played and mantras are being chanted, right? Now, someone may look at that as a religious ceremony through which people try to receive certain boons in life. Oh, the proper religious thing to do is to observe this. If I don't observe it, bad things will happen to me. If I do observe it, good things will happen to me. So let me observe this religious ritual like that. Because I'm very concerned with what I experience through my senses in this world, and this will make it better. Because this Shiva is an important figure in the cosmos and affects my experience in this world. The deeper yogis don't look at it like that. They're saying, my mind has been contaminated and polluted by so many images and sounds, etc., throughout my life that have left me confused about who I am and what the purpose of my life is. But by watching this, by taking this vision in through my eyes, right, it's reprogramming my mind. It's giving me clarity. It's refreshing it all so that it takes my thinking from this lower bodily level of identification to a higher spiritual level of understanding and of awareness. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. We could go into more detail about that, but the point that I want to make right now, and please feel free to ask questions, raise your hands and ask questions if you like at any point. But the point that I want to make right now is, what if we did have that ability to zoom out? What if we really did have that ability to look at our life as just one moment in a chain of moments? How we would think of ourselves differently, and how illuminating that would be. Well, the good news is that we actually, in one sense, we do have the ability to do that. And that involves the third application in the mind. And that's called the buddhi, the intellect, right? Based on knowledge, we can apply reasoning to our circumstances and, in a sense, look at ourselves from a different perspective. That reasoning faculty within the mind allows us to observe things from different perspectives, okay? So this is the reasoning faculty, judgment, discernment. It's happening in it's this part of the mind where this is functioning, this application within the mind. Again, I want to contrast this with the impulsive mind. The impulsive mind just responds in an instant according to how it's been programmed. Right? There's no reasoning taking place. That programming can be changed, but when it's programmed that way, it has an instant response. It's almost like an animal propensity. Yes, question?
About the impulsive mind, sorry, I know you've been talking about it yesterday.
Yes.
What's the difference between the impulsive mind and the intuitive mind? Because when we are intuitive, we are impulsed into knowing. And so we act through the first feeling of it. And if we start thinking, it's becoming the mind. So how do we know the difference between the impulsive mind and the intuitive mind?
This is such an important question. So important that it was asked yesterday. But no. It's because it's the right question. It's the right question to ask. Essentially, the question is, what is intuition? And how do we understand intuition within the framework of these applications of the mind? Is that right? Yeah. And so we said it's a little difficult for us to discern. I gave an example of a friend of mine who's like a real yogi. And I said that he told me that he has the ability to feel within his this abdomen, within this area of the body, he can feel the different organs of the body breathing separately. Like, for me, this is just a big, yeah, it's just like my guts, but he can feel, how is my gallbladder feeling at this moment? And, and how is my liver feeling right now? And so on. And so similarly, the yogis are saying, imagine if we could break down our mind into different categories and understanding which one is functioning now. Then we might be able to say what exactly I'm calling intuition right now. Is it temporary programming within the mind that's just responding like a computer may give an automatic response to certain stimulus? Or is it, could it be a voice within myself, either the voice of my own soul expressing itself through my mind, or even the Paramatma, because the yogis say that there's not only one soul within the body, but that there's two. There's this self, and then there's a form of Vishnu called Paramatma. So there's two conscious beings within the body, and that Paramatma is speaking to the self, speaking to the soul, although usually we're turned away. Right? The Upanishads speak about this, two birds on one branch, right? One is turned away from the other bird, trying to taste the fruits of the tree. That's us trying to taste the fruits of this world. And the Paramatma is there Ready, just ready for that other bird to turn around. Sometimes speaking loud, maybe we don't hear it. But it's difficult for us to necessarily say what is that voice that we hear, right? As we become more aware of ourselves and more seeing the mind from a distant perspective rather than being in the mind. Do you understand what I mean by that? I'll try to explain it. When I say being in the mind, what I mean is, nowadays a term's become very popular, which is called mindfulness. People speak of mindfulness. And so the yogis always knew about this, mindfulness. It means observing your mind. All right. If we go to meditation class, often we're asked to sit still, breathe, close our eyes, sit up straight, breathe deeply, bring our awareness to a certain part of our body, maybe to our breath. Right? And by doing, and then that kind of calms the mind. It kind of helps us leave behind what we walked in there fresh in our mind with. And once the mind is calmed a bit, then often we're told, now observe your thoughts. Observe your thoughts. And in the act of observing our thoughts, the profound experience that can happen is we realize I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my mind. So now I'm looking at my mind like we might look at a computer. It's an external object, right? But most of the time when we're going through the world, we're not feeling that distinction or that distance between ourselves and our mind. We're identifying with the thoughts in the mind and thinking these thoughts are my thoughts, not the thoughts programmed into a computer called the mind, but they're my thoughts, they're part of me. And we move around in that. So a thought that passes through the mind, we might feel that that's intuition, like there's some deep truth to it, some deep meaning to it. And it may be, but it may not be. It may just be based on the desires situated in my mind, that I feel a strong conviction about something. A lot of times people speak about following your gut. Right? Follow your gut. Sometimes we'll say, always follow your gut. Right? But what we call our gut is just something that we have a particular strong conviction about that we might not be able to put our finger on exactly why. I got a certain vibe, we might say. But whether that vibe is just some programmed information, two people may experience the same object that may either be helpful or harmful, but they may respond to it entirely differently just based on the programming that they've had in their mind. Two people look, sometimes someone walks into a room, let's say, they're dressed all in black, they have a lot of tattoos, they, have long hair, and some people's response is, that person looks dangerous. That person looks dark. I get a vibe from that person. My gut is telling me that this person is not safe for me to be around. Follow your gut. Yeah. Another person looks at that same person and says, oh, what an attractive person, what an interesting person, based on the programming that they've had, in their mind, or the experiences through the experiences that they've had. So it's difficult to say exactly what is intuition. Is it programming in the most superficial part of my mind? Is it clear thought that's gone through a reasoning filter within my mind and is established as a strong conviction in my subconscious mind? Is it the voice of my very own soul that knows nothing but truth being expressed through my mind? Is it the voice of God coming from within myself? It's hard to say. Hard to say what we label into intuition can be difficult to discern. Yes?
How are you able to make a choice?
Oh, we have to make a choice, right? And it's that manas, it's that impulsive mind that is the chooser as well. So we need to do all that we can do to convince, to program the impulsive part of our mind in a way that makes healthy choices. That's going to involve the buddhi, which we're about to get more deeply into now, the intellect, the reflective part of the mind. It also, for yogis, within the culture of yoga, there's the idea of like a triad of sources of information that one can take their thoughts and bring them to. And that's called Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. I don't know if any of you have heard this before. Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. That these all are representing the same spiritual truth. And I may have availability to them, or I do have availability to them. So I can take my thoughts, particularly like important decisions, like changing decisions, forks in the road, and so on. But not necessarily. I can take these thoughts or these ideas or these choices that I have to make to a guru, to someone who I see has a deep understanding of reality, and they embody it, right? And when they speak their words, I get clarity. I get clarity, and I develop strong convictions based on clarity of thought. Okay, that becomes a source of knowledge for me. Sadhu means, commonly this word sadhu is used nowadays to speak of these men that we see, especially that are wandering, like these sannyasis. They have the long beard and the dreadlocks and the bag over their shoulder and sleeping under a different tree every night. And they may be sadhus, but really it's their qualities that are most important, not necessarily their externals. And so, what is it? Tikshava, Karunaka, Surya Sarvadehina, Majatra Satya Sauchavyam, Sadhava Sarubhushana. The Srimad Bhagavatam speaks about the ornaments of a sadhu. What are the qualities of a sadhu? Titikshava, tolerance, Karunaka, compassion, mercy. Surya Sarvadehinam, the friend of every living being. Ajatra Satra Sauchavyam, cleanliness, Ajatra Satra, friend of, non-envious of any living being. And then these are the Sarubhushana, Sadhava Sarubhushana. Huh? These are the ornaments of the sadhu. So people that are like that, or people in the history or recorded in these ancient texts that are like that, we can see how our choices line up with their choices. And so that's Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra means these texts themselves. So we can put if we develop the conviction that here is a source of truth, then we can begin to take our choices and kind of run them through this filter and see what comes back, right? And hopefully through that we develop the ability to kind of be honest with ourselves. Right? Be honest with ourselves. I once had an experience in my life. It changed my life. I had a big decision to make in my life because I lived as a monk, as a brahmachari, wearing the orange cloth for over 13 years. And then I was at a stage in my life where I was 33 years old. And so in our lineage, you can be like a student monk. That's what it was. We call it brahmachari. Or you can take a lifelong vow to be a monk, which we call sannyas, or sannyasi. And I was at that age, and I said, now this time I have to make a decision, because I don't want to decide when I'm 43 years old to get married. If I'm going to get married, I should do it now. Otherwise, this is a lifelong monk path for me. And my guru was renowned as being a strict sannyasi, right? I think everybody thought that he would tell me, stay brahmachari, become a sannyasi eventually. But when I approached him with it, he wasn't like that at all. I said to him, right now both paths seem kind of dark to me, right? It was interesting. I said, right now,
Third one.
Yeah, there's no third one. I said, right now both paths seem kind of dark to me. And I think a lot of people believe that he would just say, yeah, well, the path of getting married is dark. It's going to be so many entanglements for you, so many attachments you're going to develop. Why waste your time like this, But he wasn't like that. He said, no. He said, both paths are very bright. It was good for me to hear that. He wasn't just trying to, yeah, just like cheer me up superficially, but it was how he saw it. And he said, both paths are very bright. And then he said, well, so what do you want to do? And I was on my way to India for 3 months. And I said, well, I'm going to India now. I have 3 months. It gives me time to think about it. And he said, no. He said, you know everything you need to know right now to make this decision, right? He says, you just have to look at it and be honest with yourself. And you're here for 3 days. So by the time these 3 days are over, you should know what you're doing. And although it felt like a type of pressure, but I very quickly realized he was so right about that. I could go on and on being indecisive. Sometimes life is such that we have to make a decision where you walk through a door and there's no turning back. That's going to happen. It's going to happen several times in our life, likely. We need to be courageous, and we need to be sober when we make these decisions. And by sober, I mean not ruled by the temporary programming in the mind, not ruled by the likes and dislikes that have been programmed into our impulsive mind. But have clear reasoning. Now we'll talk about the buddhi. Clear reasoning that's informed by good knowledge. Okay, this buddhi, this reasoning faculty, it has the ability to reach down into the subconscious mind and pull up files of information and consider them, weigh the pros and cons. It has the ability to go out through the senses, right, and take in more data that might be relevant to a decision. And if, for the yogis especially, when we have the impulsive mind, the ego, and the intellect, it's that intellect, the buddhi, that becomes prominent in the mind of the yogi. It must become prominent if we're going to move forward, right? Otherwise, we become ruled and enslaved by a fickle programming in the mind. If we're going to have self-discipline in life, which is essential for yoga, that buddhi, that intellect, has to be well-informed and strong. And by what I mean by strong is when it speaks to the impulsive mind, it's so clear that the impulsive mind surrenders to it, or that the impulsive mind says, I get it. I get it that I will suffer more if I don't hear what you're saying. Essentially, I gave this example of the alarm clock yesterday, right? The alarm clock goes off in the morning. The impulsive mind's instant reaction is, this is a horrible sound. I don't like this sound, and I don't like the idea of getting out of bed right now. But then the reasoning faculty within our mind, the buddhi, comes along and says, if you don't get up right now, you will suffer. Don't you understand? You're worried about suffering right now, the suffering of getting up, but the suffering of losing your job because you don't get up is a much deeper form of suffering. And that's the kind of language that the impulsive mind relates to, right? Oh, I don't want to suffer. So it accepts, I must get up, and it makes that choice. I will get up now. The yogi says, I'm not going to be controlled by my mind. I'm going to control it with clear reasoning, with illuminated thought. And that exists within the buddhi. Where do we get that? Where do we get that information? We get it from books like Bhagavad Gita. Reading them and contemplating them every day is a way of enriching the source of knowledge the pool of knowledge that the reasoning faculty is going to draw from. Right? If I read from this every day, I'm just giving myself a storehouse of knowledge, and really I'm kind of eliminating the other thoughts. This faculty in the mind is really fascinating because it's not only drawing information up from the memory and then weighing the pros and cons, but it's also encoding the information that comes in. And this is really important to think about this. And Krishna calls this, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna calls this buddhi yoga. It's very interesting. Two people will see the same thing. It will enter the eyes of both of them, pass through the applications of the mind and being stored in their subconscious mind or in their memory. But each one has the opportunity to encode that information as it's going in with their own intellect. Think about it, right? As that thought, one person sees the form, let's say we have two men, and they see the form of a woman. Let's say a very shapely form of a woman. And one of them just thinks that is pleasure, that is happiness, that is everything I want. And the impression goes in encoded with those emotions and those feelings. Whereas another looks at that same form and says, that is the beauty of God. That is certainly beautiful, but it's not meant for me to be the enjoyer of. And with that, it gets encoded in that way and goes into their memory bank. So what happens is the next time they see a similar form, one person feels impelled to think and act a certain way, and the other feels impelled to think and act in a separate way. So how we encode that information is really important. Think about this. This information that these yogis had, in a sense, people know about it. For instance, a child. There are certain things that parents don't want their child to see, let's say in television or film. What are the two big things? Sex and violence, right? Sex and violence. So therefore, films are rated according to the content, right? The sexual imagery or the imagery of violence. If we feel it's very sexual and or very violent, then it's given a rating that's saying children should not see this, or parents should be very careful and consider whether they want their children to see this. Why? Because this reasoning faculty in children is not yet fully developed. So the powerful imagery will pass through without them having the ability to encode it themselves. Therefore, an important role for a parent is to be that reasoning filter and encode information for their children as they see it and experience it, right? It's not, the parent is not just responsible for the body of the child, but they're also responsible for the mind of the child. And we sort of all get that, right? But the yogis had it all clearly figured out and laid out. I'll give you an example. Let's say a mother is walking down the street with her daughter, and let's say the daughter is young, like maybe 4 years old. And let's say they witness something very violent. Let's say a car crash. Let's say they witness a deadly car crash, and let's say it happens like right in front of their eyes. And there's a loud sound, crash. It's frightening to anyone, what to speak of for a child. And then there's imagery of a person that, bloodied and perhaps dead. And now the first thing that the mother is probably going to do is take that child aside, right? And say, I know we just saw something very scary. I know it was very frightening. But I want you to understand that you're safe, right? I don't know exactly what a mother would say in that certain, but something like this, I know that was very scary and there's some scary things in life, but I want you to understand that you're protected and you're safe. So that the next time a child sees a car, it's not terrified, because the parent encoded the information for the child. What would be the word, like remotely, in a sense, right? And then refed that information into them. They became a filter into the mind of the child. So the yogi is carefully encoding the sights that they see, the sounds that they hear. They're also putting up firewalls. A big part of yoga is this self-discipline, where I accept certain things and I reject other things. I no longer are going to watch this kind of film. I no longer am going to listen to this kind of music, because I know it's programming my mind in a particular. I'm going to put up the firewall. I'm no longer going to associate so closely or openly with these kind of people. Right? I'm going to put up a firewall because I know how it programs my mind. The yogis are really concerned about how the information goes into the mind as it encoded. And if we are careful, then what we do is we build this storehouse of illuminated thought that we're drawing from it at all times.
This is yamas niyamas?
Well, yamas niyamas, exactly. It's like, what are the yamas niyamas, right? It begins with nonviolence, being truthful, having sexual control, etc., etc. If I'm trying to settle my mind, but I'm stirring it up with so much imagery and sound, etc., then my potential as a yogi just becomes lost. Right? So the first thing we have to do is work out our lifestyle, right? Then we work out the body. We do that through asana. Then we work out the breath. We do that through pranayama. Then we work out the senses. We do that through pratyahara. And then we can begin to focus the mind, right? Yeah. I'll give another example of how the interface between these applications in the mind can work. Are you ready? I'm hoping this can be helpful. I'll try to say it clearly. Let's say there's a man walking down a sidewalk in a city. And he's just walking home from work one day. And he's walking down one sidewalk and he looks across the street and he sees a store, a window of a store. And within that window, he sees a cardboard cutout advertisement. And the cardboard cutout is cut in the form of a beautiful woman. And she's wearing a bathing suit. And on that bathing suit is the logo of a particular brand of alcohol. And she's smiling. Okay? Now that wasn't put there just randomly. That was put there very intentionally by people that had some knowledge about how the mind works. And what they were trying to do was, in the mind of the viewer, they were trying to blend two things. Blend feelings of excitement and pleasure with their product, right? We want we want a person, when they see our logo, that automatically from within the subconscious mind comes encoded information that gives them a taste or memory of pleasure and excitement, like that. So they've tied it to this form that represents that to the person's mind. Now the two are together. Does it make sense? It's almost like we can have files on our computer that have, I forget what it's called, but like you can, thank you, tags, right? You can tag a particular file so that if you just say, what would be a tag that someone might have, like, important, or let's say like recipes or something like that. It's going to, anything that has recipes or something related to politics. Okay, I can tag that file, and then when I can just write politics and it's going to draw all this information up. So they've taken the memory of their logo and they've tagged it with pleasure and excitement, and that's gone encoded into the hard drive, the memory bank of the person that views it. Does it make sense? So this person's just become a victim of this. He walked by, he saw the form, he saw the logo of the alcohol brand, and then memories started to come up. Feelings attached to those memories started to come up, emotions. They may have been like emotions of excitement, emotions of pleasure, emotions, let's say memories of like, it may not even be exactly clear memories, but feelings connected to memories of like being the life of the party, being carefree, being attractive, like this, being fun. And it's coming up, and it's coming up strong. And he's looking back at the image, and it's kind of, they're going back and forth. It's increasing in him, these feelings. And as he's standing on the corner waiting to cross the street and continue going home, he's thinking, maybe I should go into that store. He develops the conviction. The manas, the impulsive mind, says there's pleasure there. Accept it. I accept it. Right? I choose to go and buy a bottle of that alcohol, because I think when I'm drinking it, I'm going to start to feel these feelings again. But he has to wait because the lights turned red before he can cross the street. And in that time, other files are rising from his subconscious mind, coming to the forefront. And they're passing through the reasoning aspect, right? The reasoning aspect, we've had the impulsive mind saying pleasure, good, accept. And even on the level of the ego, right, is playing with his sense of male ego, right? Is playing with his sense of male ego, like, if I drink that alcohol, I'm an attractive man, admired by women, and so on. It's playing with that idea. But now the reasoning faculty is interfacing with this other information that's coming up, and some of these aren't such pleasant memories or pleasant feelings. You know, the feeling of making a fool of oneself. You know, I've made a fool of myself when I drink like that. I've humiliated myself. Or maybe I've, maybe a feeling or memory of a car accident. That's rising up. But then one very distinct file rises from the subconscious mind, something he hadn't thought about for a long time. It was sitting there on the hard drive. He hadn't engaged with it. But now it's risen up to the forefront of his awareness. And that's a memory and a deep, powerful, uneasy, emotional feeling connected to that memory of his wife telling him that I love you and I want to spend my life with you. But if you can't get your drinking under control, then I'm going to have to leave you and I'm going to have to take our children from you. And that, and he feels like that, the feeling of that memory is washing over him. You understand? It's even so profound, it's making his heart beat faster, you know? There's chemicals being released in his body that give him almost like a nauseous feeling, right? Powerful feeling. And then he decides, then the manas begins to realize that's not pleasure, that's pain. And says no, right? So now he continues to walk on. Like that. He avoided that, right? Now let's say he's walking by the next day, right? And he's remembering all that he went through standing on that corner. Maybe he says, I'm not even going to look in that direction. Right? I don't want to go through that again. I don't want to feel so vulnerable that my mind was about to take control of me and send me down a dark path. But he's starting to think about this more, and he's walking past it every day. And every day he's developing the conviction, I will keep walking. And it's becoming easier as he does it. It's becoming, you know, that illumined thought that's coming from his reasoning is becoming more prominent, and the decision is easier to make. And he gets to the point where he sees it in a different... The first time he walked by that, he saw a beautiful woman. He saw excitement. Now when he walks by, he looks through the same eyes, but he sees it differently. Because that image triggers some other ideas or other feelings or other memories or other convictions. And so what he saw, I mean, it's not a beautiful woman. It's a piece of cardboard. It has no relation to him. But it represented something and drew files from his mind in a particular way. But now when he sees it, he doesn't see a beautiful woman. He actually sees advertising agency, right? He actually sees that certain people put that there for me, but it has no effect on me, right? And so now he can move through the world with greater ease, with greater clarity. So the yogis are really, they're honing this ability to reason clearly. They're informing this body of knowledge that they have in their memory bank. They're pulling up files, almost like an antivirus kind of function on a computer, which goes through all your files and sees if there's anything problematic there, right? And with their buddhi, with their reasoning faculty, it's going through all the files, all the memories, all the feelings, and re-encoding them so that I see things in a different way. I used to be so weak, right? I used to be so weak, I used to be controlled, but now I've got control of it. Yes, question?
Does that also work in the positive way? So, like, I notice sometimes that I listen to podcasts from some speaker and I don't understand it immediately, or maybe I wasn't conscious when he was listening. Does it also resonate with you maybe after a while that you listen to it and at a certain point you understand it better?
This is a great point that you made, because in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is going to tell Arjuna that the mind can be your best friend or your worst enemy. In a sense, that means the manas, or the impulsive mind, which is doing all the choosing, it can choose well in ways that are helpful for you, or it can choose in ways that are harmful for you. And the more that our mind becomes clearly informed with healthy yogic truth, the more that our mind's going to become inclined to make choices that are healthy. And then the mind becomes the friend. For instance, like I'd imagine probably most of you, if not all of you, have practiced asana at some point. And a lot of times when we first start to practice asana, we have a whole different lifestyle. But and our motive for practicing asana may be, I want to be healthier, I want to be more attractive, something like that in the beginning. But as we begin to practice it, it makes us feel good in a different way than a lot of other things make us feel good. It feels pure, and it affects the way that we think, and we like this change, and it begins to change the decisions that we make in our life. So like, I recognize now my yoga feels better, and I feel better when I go to sleep early, and I rise early. And my yoga becomes, the experience that I feel is deeper if I don't eat ice cream, at 11 o'clock at night before going to bed. And if I don't stay out all night partying with my friends. And soon we're starting to make new decisions in life, and our friends are looking at us and saying, hey, you changed. You're different. You used to be fun, but now you're not fun anymore. And we realize we're just seeing the world in a different way, but it's healthy for us and feels good. And then our motive to do yoga begins to shift, and we're interested in it for different reasons, and we're moving forward. And so, yeah, the idea is we do want to program that mind so that it becomes a friend. And then we naturally begin to have a taste for rising early, taste for eating healthy food, taste for so many things. Yeah. Yes?
What's the yogi's point of view on addiction? Because everything you're talking about making, the right choice and filtering, but when it comes to a pure addiction,
yeah.
Are the yogis having any point of view on that?
Well, certainly, and by the way, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we have a bhakti recovery group here present as part of this festival today. And we have a little booth out here, a little questions and answers booth where you can meet that person. Every day we actually have bhakti recovery meetings, which is like 12-step recovery in the context of bhakti. It's a great question. We're practically out of time. Maharaj, please welcome. But and maybe we can pick this up tomorrow. But in brief, we can say that those are loops that go through the mind that are very difficult to break. And 12-step programs, they understand something about how the mind works and how to break those loops. A lot of it has to do with a good, clear look at oneself and admitting something to oneself. How weak we potentially are, how powerless we are, how we need God's help, how we've wronged people, all those kind of things. Going through those steps helps reprogram the mind in a healthy way so that we can make healthier decisions. Thank you all so much. It's been wonderful spending this time with you. Please stick around now. Thank you. we have thank you. Hare Krishna. There'll be a very beautiful ceremony, a very sweet kirtan, but a very powerful ceremony wherein we can take in vision through our eyes, sound through our ears, and bring in very healthy impressions that make it easier for us to feel our own true nature of prema, of love for God. So please stick around. I think you'll enjoy it if you can. Thank you.